It means that we have an almost incalculable capacity to change who and how we feel today by changing the environment around us today.
And that's the whole purpose of this podcast, because a lot of us, we don't realize we are less than 1/1,000,000% of life on this planet. I was just asked the other day by someone new to us if I was the forbidden doctor. Well, of course I said no. The forbidden doctor is not me at all.
We are not the forbidden doctor. Jack is not the forbidden doctor. It's in you.
The forbidden doctor is that magical, mystical power inside of you that is controlling and healing you.
It's that beautiful, marvelous, almost miraculous force that controls all healing.
It's that innate intelligence, that life force-directed influence that triggered your DNA to guide the building of your body after conception.
Yeah, it's that power that sustains your life, repairs your wounds and lesions, and it never stops working. It's that essential part of you that keeps you alive and heals your every hurt.
This is the forbidden doctor. It's not me. It's that part of you the powers that be have decreed forbidden to ever learn about or even consider, and never ever rely upon. For it is forbidden that you even know this life force exists at all.
You are your own forbidden doctor.
Yes. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jack.
And Mary.
And welcome to our 200th Forbidden Podcast.
200!
Yes, this is podcast episode 200. The Germ Theory of Disease is not true.
This 200th podcast is a very seminal podcast that is very prescient for today.
Yeah, we're going to talk about one of the most forbidden falsehoods that has ever been perpetrated on the people of America.
And the whole modern world, for that matter.
That's right. That's left us believing that we are just sitting ducks for the next hysteria-filled terror coming from the money and the politically motivated minds of our healthcare leaders, rather than the voice of real scientists who have been silenced by the drug mob.
Yeah, it's our intention to follow the modern medical model and kill and bury this boogeyman. But before we get to that...
Yeah, the most profound positive change that we've seen in medicine with this COVID hysteria is the advent of telemedicine. And we all know how incredibly frustrating it is to go to a doctor's office, pay your copay, sit in a waiting room for an hour, spend 5 minutes with a doctor, and walk out with a prescription. And regardless of your presenting complaint, you're going to be prescribed drugs for everything and drugs for anything.
Except when drugs and surgery are recommended.
Yeah, they'll throw in some surgery.
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice to find alternative answers to your health problems that actually lead to healing rather than just suppressing symptoms?
How would you like to have almost unlimited access to a doctor and nutritionists and be listened to, heard, and receive the answers you're looking for in a respected, non-condescending manner?
Yeah, how would you like to enjoy the peace that comes from foundational healing rather than the useless frustration of managing symptoms?
Well, we'd like to introduce you to our new VIP membership. For $29 a month, you can ask private, HIPAA-secure questions and have a two-way conversation with us, Mary and myself, or our nutritionists.
Yeah, you can ask about your hemorrhoids.
Or that weird cyst that's growing in an unmentionable place, that lump, or that erectile dysfunction in a discreet, private, digital setting.
So we know you're slapping your head right now thinking, man, oh man, another company trying to get a monthly fee out of me. But how could you get a more calming feeling than to have a doctor in your pocket at all times? We don't have to tell you how important your health is, because you know the old saying, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Boy, that's true. And you know, Doug Steffen, who's the host of the national radio show that I'm on, has us on call 24/7.
Yep.
He's a VIP member.
Yeah, he texts us all the time with his health questions.
Yeah. So how would you like to have texting abilities just like he does with us?
Yeah, and not only do you get the ability to text us when you feel the urgency or just the need to know something better than a Google search answer, you get a real answer personalized just for you, because we all know no two people are the same.
Yeah, and that's not all. I mean, you also get 20% off of any recommended supplements at any time.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for a sale.
No, and you're not going to find lower prices for standard processed products anyway. And you also get free shipping
yeah.
over $100, as we said, discrete HIPAA texting capabilities right to us.
And for a little bit more, if you're having a chronic problem where more attention than texting, the texting discussion can provide you, you can upgrade to a monthly phone or video consultation. And here's something about those chronic problems. When Jack was a little boy in 1825.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know.
No, actually
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
1950s, this statistic, according to the CDC, 1.2% of the children in America had a chronic problem. Today, again, according to the CDC, over 54% of America's children, let alone the adults, have chronic issues for which drugs simply do not address the foundational cause.
And why the jump from 1.2% to 54% over several decades? Well, that is the mission of the Forbidden Doctor, to teach you one-on-one how to help the foundational issues and not just cover it up with drugs or surgery.
Yeah, because though we recognize in certain cases drugs and surgery are indicated, wouldn't it be nice to learn how to address the reason for the need for drugs and surgery?
So join us, become a part of our family. Go to forbiddendoctor.com/VIP, or on the homepage of the website, click the box for VIP membership and sign up now for that healthy peace of mind.
Oh, and guys, we have an upgrade to our website.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Click in the upper right-hand corner on forbiddendoctor.com where it says easy order form, because now, finally, it's much easier to order from our website. We listened and we heard you. Now, on to things they don't want you to know.
So it's quite an auspicious title there. The Germ Theory of Disease is not true. For well over a century, a consistent belief of the Western world that just is everywhere is the idea that disease indiscriminately attacks us from outside of ourselves, and that we live our lives just as an unwitting victim of some invisible germ against which we have very little defense.
Except for those so-called magic of Western science and the mystique that surrounds the commercialized medical/pharmaceutical technologies.
Exactly. And so very pervasive, this cultural belief system that extends all the way back to the 17th century with Descartes and with Sir Isaac Newton's mechanical reductionist viewpoints of the human body, as well as humanity's overall relationship with the universe. This reductionist approach towards looking into and really understanding the physical organism that is the human form, and this bacteria and its relationship to health and disease usually involves breaking everything down in the body to as many tiny little parts as possible. And each of these body parts, and we have, I don't know how many specialties we have today looking at all these little tiny body parts under the title of medical specialization, is this belief that we can better understand the entire human anatomy if we understand all these separate little parts.
Can you explain that reductionist philosophy?
Well, reductionism is where you're going to take the specific and go up to the general. And the induction is where you go from the general down to the specific. No, excuse me, I have that backwards. The induction is where you go from the specific up to the general. In other words, induction is where you take a little thing and well, what caused this? Oh, that did. Well, what caused that? Well, let's look at the bigger picture. Let's get some perspective. What
kind of like an inverted triangle?
An inverted triangle. And a reductionist is where you go from that general down to the specific. The general would be a watch. And the reductionist idea is to break that watch down into its tiny little different component parts, where you have the hand and the winder and the spring and the little jewels and the brass container and the glass thing that covers it up. And you do that enough, you end up with a glass specialist, and you end up with a spring specialist, and you end up with a design marketing specialist that all see their part as the watch rather than a collective of the whole. And so what's happened when you relate that to these kinds of beliefs that we have today, that the body is a system of parts
that
rather than a magical whole that has parts in it, then you end up with, well, the human body is just the biological machine.
Yes, but each part of the body needs to be healthy in order for the whole body to work together well.
Well, that's true. So Western medicine and healthcare today just looks at the body like some kind of a machine. There's this in here inside the body, and there's this out there outside the body, and they're separate and quite distinct from one another. And that disease is just a separate organism all into itself. That you've got
the
this
big bad virus. Is
well,
what you're talking
that's
about.
it, and you've got this foreign, this hostile entity that's separate from us, and it's capable of coming in and causing all kinds of harm to us.
Like a boogeyman.
And that illness is just a calamity that strikes the body from the outside, and we just have to put up with it with the assistance of palliative medications. And if we're lucky, over a period of a week or 2 or 3, we'll start feeling better, and that we'll get our health back when the disease symptoms disappear.
So they classify health as merely the absence of disease symptoms.
Exactly. If you don't have any symptoms, then you're healthy.
Yeah, which is not true.
And so as with disease, healing occurs independently of the mind and the emotions and human consciousness. It's just the result of germs.
Yeah.
And so the level of health then depends upon the quality of the medicine you get. And health or the healing process itself just occurs as a result of what something has done for us or what somebody has done to us, rather than what we do for ourselves.
So outside of us, that
Yes.
we're not responsible for this.
That's right.
That we
We're
just have to get
victims.
the quality medicine that will, So the reason we like and adopted the germ theory as a community, the germ theory of disease as gospel truth, is because it takes all the responsibility away from us to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
All
it's
we have
somebody
to-
else's fault.
Yeah, getting away from guilt seems to be the number one goal of most people when our value is dependent on our actions. So if we can blame a boogeyman, a germ, and then understandably try to get away and stay away from him or her, there's girl boogeymans, I think.
Yeah, there probably is. Boogie girls.
Then we are blameless and we have no responsibility to take care of our own health.
Yeah. So let's relate that back to the history of the germ theory. During the 1800s, Western cultural science, Western medicine perceived the human body as just a bunch of various parts that existed primarily separate from the mind and the emotions and the spirit.
Oh.
So we separated our liver and our heart and our gut from the control of the mind over those things. And so with that perception, Western civilization just began to embrace this mindset that, as far as I'm concerned, has just evolved into a religious belief. Like, as you said, Mary, namely that Western science and its particular, what we call the scientific method, is uniquely objective, but it's dispassionate and a direct insult.
They think.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a direct insight into truth and reality.
Yes, which insults our inner sense.
Yeah.
Because this is a situation where literally consensus has taken the place of science.
Yeah, since consensus has taken over and the science has been just pushed aside, it also needs to be pointed out that we don't know what we don't know when we only listen to the medical consensus.
Right, and that consensus will change from time to time. The how smoking was good, 100 years ago for digestion.
My doctor smokes.
That's right. My doctor smokes Chesterfield.
Yeah.
And it's
and vaccines are safe and effective, which we haven't come to yet.
We have plenty of podcasts on that, but
But let me tell you. Let me give you an example.
Okay.
We had a family gathering. Well, before COVID started, where a relative of ours had recently been diagnosed with colon cancer. Now, she's a young woman with 6 kids, and I have to say and note that she has never consulted with us, and nor has she seen us in any supportive or nutritional aspect whatsoever, right?
Yep.
Yeah. You know how a prophet has no honor in his own country.
Exactly.
Well, she came to this little party we had, and she was sitting there eating ice cream and cake.
Now, the one who had colon cancer.
Yes, and I was floored.
Yeah, I remember
I mean,
that.
had nobody told her she can't have any sugar with a diagnosis of cancer? So it just blows my mind. But, I have to realize nobody talks about this in their daily discussions like we do, almost 24/7. So I had to calm myself and realize that this is the way most of our society is.
Yes.
We're never taught or given this very basic nutritional advice while dealing with cancer.
Yeah, let me give you another example. I know we want to talk about germ theory of disease, but I have to about consensus, because I was consulting with this new patient here recently, and I always like to know what they're taking, because I find out a lot of times the medications with all their side effects can cause some of their presenting complaints, but also synthetic supplements can do the same thing. So I wanted to know what she took, and she was taking 5,000 international units of vitamin D. And I said, wait, hold on a second. Do you know that 5,000 international units of vitamin D can cause joint and muscle pain?
Yeah.
And she looked at me like I had just told her the moon really is made of cheese.
Well, many patients are offered 50,000.
Up to 50,000.
Unbelievable.
And it's all synthetic, and and that's consensus. It's one of the latest fads where medicine is flirting with nutrition that they know nothing about.
And what was she shocked?
She was shocked
about
what she couldn't believe was that her doctor didn't know everything. And I said to her, they have no training in nutrition. Oh, Dr. Jack, no, they have no training in nutrition.
We're just not taught this.
And I think it's important to note that science certainly is not absolute. And what we have today is simply a cultural form of knowingness.
That keeps changing all the time.
Well, what do we know? Well, we know this. Well, do we? What kind of science is behind it? And so this knowingness is just relative to a civilization's already existing cultural beliefs.
Yeah.
This is what our culture believes until we believe something else.
And you will be shamed if you don't believe it.
Oh, yeah. And so a particular cultural science is just a subjective, deeply conditioned, and of course politically correct cultural attitude towards the world in general, which is gradually formed in the collective consciousness of everyone of that culture over an extended period of time. We just accept this as true. And, and if we believe the universe and ourselves to just be mechanical, operating biological machines.
And vulnerable to attack by microorganisms.
Yeah, exactly. Then our belief systems are going to cause us to live mechanically. They're going to cause us to live by consensus rather than the mind, the body, and the spirit. That really can provide overwhelming power if we are simply little machines running around here on the face of the earth.
And victims
of these microorganisms. But, the greatest force in the human body is its natural drive to continually heal itself.
Because our body is set to repair and restore, not to degenerate.
You know what? I think you should say that again, maybe even a little slower, because this is very profound.
I say this all the time
Yes,
to
you
people,
do.
and it brings such hope into their lives. Your body is set to repair and restore, not to degenerate. It just needs the nutrition to be able to do that.
And so this force is not independent of one's belief system.
Yeah.
I don't care what your mental or emotional expectations are, but they can morph into physiological changes and outcomes. The ability of 15 billion neurons in the human brain to simply convert how you think, what you hope for, what your ideas are, how you feel when you wake up in the morning,
Your
what your attitude during the day,
Yeah.
can convert it into actual chemical substances that ultimately create your own individual reality.
And listen to our Forbidden Podcast number 101 to understand how we actually create chemicals in our blood from our thoughts.
Yes, exactly.
From our thoughts, our blood chemistry changes.
You can think yourself into cancer. Dr. Sachs, oh, good gracious, 30 years ago, I forget the name of the book he wrote, but he talked about the attitude of cancer, the emotion of cancer, something like that. He's an MD, and it was a great book on how people can talk themselves into it.
Bruce Lipton, which we,
Yes.
took a lot of Podcast 101 from, says the same thing.
Well, unfortunately, Western science still adheres to the belief that germs cause disease. And few of us question, as I was talking about here a minute ago, this culturally accepted fact of life. And this infamous germ theory that, was initially proposed by Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch during the, a little over 100 years ago, late 1800s, is simply oversimplified. It's inaccurate. and it's tragically misleading when applied to one's daily life experience, and that is what we're going to get into in this podcast.
But nevertheless, Jack, it continues to reign as the cornerstone and the foundation of our culture's common conceptual understanding of the cause and cure of human disease.
Exactly.
Even though many of Pasteur's associates and colleagues deeply disagreed with his theory, then they disagreed, 140 years ago? His ideas caught on in the socially and politically driven dynamics of that day, and eventually were accepted as the truth.
Yeah,
we're not taught.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. We're not taught the true history of medicine, let alone the true history of so many other things. It's as if the Library of Alexandria has burned down once again.
Yeah, and so even though there were other well-known, in fact, better-known medical physiologists of the day who said, oh, that germ theory is nonsense, and we'll get into it here before this show's over, this almost explosive rapidity with which this germ theory of disease became accepted by Western medicine, the allopathic medicine, it absolutely stands almost alone as this spectacular historical phenomenon.
No, it doesn't. Social media has spread it even faster than these guys.
Yeah.
Social shaming on social media has spread this germ theory of disease. I mean, it has just been a disease, a germ a virus that has spread through the digital makeup of our society.
Yeah, now, if you Google modern conceptions regarding or ideas of the germ theory, you're going to find certain allopathic physicians out there now who no longer believe that germs are the sole cause of disease, but it gets very little
press,
very little public education.
Their posts get erased on Facebook,
it does,
and Instagram,
That's
and
right.
YouTube.
If you go up against Big Pharma, you're going to get banned from YouTube and Facebook and Twitter.
There's been very little public educational information to the contrary, either promoted or sponsored by this very powerful and influential group of health authorities.
Yeah, our medical doctors.
Yep.
And as well as the equally informed or insightful media coverage.
Little informed. Informed.
That could assist in further educating the average person to believe otherwise.
Yeah, they should have had a nutritionist on the stand with Dr. Fauci and President Bush. Bush. Did I say that? It's because I'm thinking of Zach Bush, Dr. Zach Bush, who you have to go read and listen to on YouTube. He's amazing. But they should have had a nutritionist up there. I wish they'd had Dr. Zach Bush. He's an MD, but he understands this germ theory of disease is not true way better. I know that's not correct English, but it's way better than those guys on the stand did. So our point is that over the last 100 years or more in particular, what was once a healing art has been bastardized into a front for medications of all colors and varieties, as though the only way to restore health is to poison the body to do it.
All drugs are poison. I mean, even an aspirin is poison to the body.
Yeah, kill the bad guy, the boogeyman, the germ.
Yeah, so this drugs for anything and drugs for everything mindset just completely leaves behind the natural processes that are in our bodies to heal and restore its own internal balances. If you give it the proper nutrition, if you give it the proper support, it's amazing what it can do. Now, is there a time for a drug approach? Well, of course. But for every single bothersome nuisance that afflicts us when most of it's simply the effects of a malnourished or environmentally poisoned body? I don't think so.
And then even the poisons, like, for instance, we get people all the time that have bad guts, but they don't know that's a problem, and they come in with eczema or psoriasis.
Yes.
I one time, I hate to even remember this, I had this little 3-year-old boy come in to see me. His grandmother paid the mother to bring him in to see me, and he had psoriasis so bad on his body that he looked like a burn victim.
Oh.
I can't even, there's no words. So I said, as best I could, because, man, if you throw guilt on a mother, they run the other way 100 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah, because they see it like it's their fault for some reason.
And that's why the grandmother had to pay for him to come in. And I begged her to get some good nutrition in him. And she said he still only drinks a bottle. And he was 3 years old. And I tried as hard as I could, but I never saw him again.
I'll bet it was formula, and I'll bet it was pasteurized milk, and those two together will kill a kid's gut.
It was so sad, but anyway, that's
Well, before we
all I
go
know.
on and talk about the germ theory, I just want to bring up the free symptom survey that we offer on the homepage at forbiddendoctor.com. It is the most comprehensive survey you're ever going to take, tons of questions, and after you're done, you have the opportunity to have a free 30-minute phone consultation, and you'll be given a personalized protocol.
For free.
Yeah, and this saves you money in the long run because you're not going to be taking supplements you don't need. And all of it at no charge to you.
And if you decide to purchase the recommended supplements, you can get them at a 10% discount if you sign up for our text blast. These text blasts, which come out about once a week, sometimes twice a week, give you fantastic coupons every single week. Just text the word healthy to 41411, and we'll text you back a coupon code, which you can use on our website, forbiddendoctor.com, when you check out. Or you can call our office if you don't have the texting capabilities at 801-523-1890, and they can help you sign up for the text blast or help you sign up for our VIP membership, where you have not a coupon, you have the ability anytime, anywhere, all the time to get 20% off.
Yes.
So, and remember, your patronage of our offers keeps this podcast on the air.
So back to this germ theory. Now, this historic idea of one germ, one disease theory that was initially proposed by Pasteur, and then Robert Koch came along, 1881, basically postulating that every little type of germ, a bacillus or a staphylococcus, or
well, there's 30,000 species, baby.
exactly.
So you're going to be a
that
while.
Any single one of them was responsible for getting inside you and producing a certain kind of an ailment. And so what they called it back then was the doctrine of specificity. And that and I'm going to quote from that this is from those guys. Certain microscopic entities whose appearance in space and time correlates well with other physical manifestations of illness are causative of illness.
Now remember, this was about
End
140 years ago.
Yeah. So this doctrine of specificity was quickly refuted and disproven by a number of Pasteur's contemporaries, most notably Claude Bernard, he was the one who wrote. He was French, and he wrote the fantastic paper Milieu Intérieur.
Yes, and you're going to quote it in French right now, right?
Well, it's quote, the stability of the internal environment.
The interior.
Is the condition for the free and independent life.
Ooh.
And he coupled up with I.M. Sechenov, who Ivan Pavlov, and we all know about Pavlov's dogs and the work that Pavlov did in Russia.
And the dog
he
comes
referred
running.
to Sechenov as the father of Russian physiology. So we're talking about Claude Bernard, I.M. Sechenov, among a bunch of others who said, Louis, go back to the drawing table.
Wow.
This is crazy, because in spite of the published research findings of Pasteur and Koch's contemporaries that definitively demonstrated the profound limitations of their overall conclusion, which we're going to get into in this podcast, Pasteur's initial theory was dynamically reinforced, unfortunately, by the then current university-trained allopathic physicians who at the time were referred to as regular doctors. There were a bunch of doctors running all around the planet.
They wanted a specialty.
And they
wanted to stand out.
There were the doctors who used herbalism, and there were the doctors who were known as bone setters, who knew that by moving bones in the spine, the body could repair its problems.
But they wanted to be more special than that.
Right. So it was
so these regular doctors,
yes, go ahead.
They were desperately seeking like kind of a nucleus around which to create some sort of, quote, science in order to develop a form of prominent healing profession. So that would set them apart from all the other, various and diverse systems of healthcare that were coexisting at that time.
Yeah, and if they could incorporate this seemingly scientific approach to understanding disease, then, the natural road to follow would simply be the road that everyone would start trafficking after that.
Well, it's the fear. It's the Go ahead.
A chemical approach that would, in the end, protect the industry more than the patient.
Ooh.
And that's kind of what happened.
Ooh. So again, this takes the responsibility away from us. If germs cause disease, then we're just victims to them. Then we have to go live in a bubble away from everybody, wear masks, and then be dependent on a new drug or a vaccine instead of our own health. And then we just have to kill the bad guy.
Right.
We got a new war.
Historically speaking, this development manifested at a time when the regular doctors were using bleeding.
The heroic use of bleeding.
Yes, and they were using leeches and the administration of mercury and arsenic and various other poisonous chemical drugs that
were safe and effective according to them.
Yes, but literally killing their patients.
Yeah.
So the initial postulates of Pasteur and his co-proponent Robert Koch, and I've talked about Koch's postulates many times, unintentionally provided these regular doctors with this, this eagerly adopted, this nucleus, as you were referring to, that they could all gather around and say, we're the real doctors.
This is the medicine of the future.
Right.
Yeah. So in 1882, little notice was taken when Pasteur revised and restated his theory, describing germs as a secondary rather than a primary cause of disease, with the body's debilitated terrain being considered the initial cause. So he changed his mind.
Yes, this comes from his diaries.
This
is you're not going to read this in a medical anthology. You have to go to Pasteur's diaries because the medical anthologists do not want this made public information.
No, this has been hidden for 140 years.
Towards the end of his life said, germs play a part, but it's secondary. It's secondary to the condition of the body in which the germs take root. And so when you look at a straight line in history of these events and the politics of misinterpretation and the subsequent explosion and the prominence of his additional theory into the public mindset and all the medical practices that broke off after that definitively or definitely illustrates how a belief system that's based on certain assumptions, marketed as science, though not necessarily based on irrefutable evidence, but
Koch's postulants,
that can alter and affect the collective consciousness of an entire culture. In other words, it's so simple. The germ theory is so simplistic. One germ, one disease. One germ, one disease leads to one drug. The three disease.
Run away from that germ.
It could easily catch on to the mindset.
As if.
And so the unsung work of Pasteur's fellow research scientists is far more relevant and significant for the layperson of today. And we're going to get into that because in rebuttal to Pasteur's what he called the doctrine of specific etiology. In other words, the cause of this disease is a single bug. They were clearly demonstrated, these four concepts, as you keep pointing out, Mary, 140 years ago. And it's these four concepts. Number one.
So now this is the contemporary research scientists, the contemporaries of Dr.
Pasteur, who didn't agree. Who
didn't agree.
Yeah, right.
So these are their four concepts.
Number one, that disease microorganisms seek out their own natural habitats, namely diseased tissues. Just as flies and rats fill up an unintended, back in the alleyway with trash cans and dumps that don't get cleaned up.
Yeah, clean up the trash and the fleas and rats go elsewhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
You clean up the body and the microorganisms suddenly have no power over you. And germs vary in their...
And this is number two.
Number two, that germs would vary in their, what they called back then, the fermentative effect. In other words, their ability to grow, their ability to increase their population, their numbers, to spread in the body, was in conformity with the medium in which they find themselves. In other words,
so a healthy
depending
body.
on the health, how healthy the body was, the germs could ferment, or in other words, grow, multiply, or not. And the point number three,
the host must be in a certain state of weakness before germs can settle into the body's tissue to produce a state of disease. That's number three. That's my favorite.
And number four, the disease process is largely dependent upon the terrain.
Well, that's good too.
Or the underlying health of the body itself, as we have seen with COVID. Who are the people who are dying at the greatest demographic of COVID? The people with comorbidity, the people who are already very, very, very sick.
And weak.
And towards the end of their life anyway. They're the ones who go first. So you've got to look deeper than the germ. You know, in every family, well, maybe not every family, you got to have enough members of the family, but there's somebody in that family who's sick all the time.
Yeah.
And there's somebody in the family who never gets sick.
And they're eating the same food.
They eat the same food, they're breathing the same air, they sit at the same table, the same furniture, they're sitting there watching the same TV shows, breathing, exhaling, breathing, exhaling
But
the
you
same air.
don't know they're a secret junk food junkie.
Yeah, but one of them has, you know,
gonna
if they
die
don't have
with the Snicker
vodka
bars.
hidden in the tank of the toilet, they have bags of candy hidden under their pillows
What's that old
at night.
song? They're gonna have. I'm gonna die with a Snicker bar by my head or something. The junk food junkie song.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
So, you know, the idea is that you have to look deeper than the germ. You have to look at the underlying health of the people, and as these contemporaries of Pasteur said, you have to look at that the germ will grow in conformity with the medium in which they find themselves. A sick gut is going to produce a lot of germs. A sick heart, a sick liver, a sick kidney. Now, what we're going to get into here is what's causing that sickness.
Yes, because the scientific assumption that infectious diseases are caused by the transmission of bacteria and viruses has led to this crazy widespread abuse of synthetic antibiotics.
Yeah, and these products have caused irreparable harm to the health of people in all the industrialized nations throughout the world. I mean, even causing such insufferable affliction as candida. The multiple antibiotic use, you are going to be a candida factory.
Yeah. And then with his subsequent addiction to sugar, because it's killed all the bugs except for candida.
Yep.
And then a tremendous increase in allergies because of the leaky gut and everything that follows a use of candida, use of antibiotics, and then it never gets healed because you're craving sugar so bad, and you get in this cycle you can't get out of. You know, my brother, who is a PhD microbiologist, he's a geneticist, actually, and he said one night to me, and I don't know if he would repeat it today, because I think I caught him in a weak moment. Actually, I know I caught him in a weak moment. He said the one drug he would never take. Never. He said, I'll take any drug. You know me, Mary. I'll take any drug there is. And he does. He takes a lot of drugs. He said the one drug he will never, ever, ever take is an antibiotic. And he said, they're not the simple antibiotics from the whenever they invented
1930s.
30s, or was it I don't know.
Well, they started in the 30s, but they didn't really become prominent till World War II.
He says there are antibiotics now that you will never recover from.
Yeah.
The fluoroquinolones that we talked about on one podcast
they'll
that
tear up
damage
your ligaments.
Yeah, terrible things. But, you know, we can still help with that. Your body, remember, is set to repair and restore. It is not set to degenerate. So this, too, can be turned around. But I thought that was a really interesting statement by my brother because...
Well, it's led to this senseless urge we have to destroy these enemy microorganisms.
And isolate ourselves away from them.
I mean, it's the thought processes of most people and physicians alike that even though there's more than sufficient awareness that it's not the presence of these microbes,
not at all,
but the present state of our defense mechanisms that ultimately determines the existence of an infection and where it goes and how bad it's going to get.
Yep, because let me give you an example. If you take a throat culture on several different people, many of them will show some kind of microbe in their throat, but few, if any, will actually show symptoms.
Yeah, in other words, it isn't the causative agent, the microbes that you're talking about in the throat that's a decisive factor. It's the condition of the tissue of the throat that allows them to flourish and grow larger population, and then the byproducts of those germs are toxic and poisonous to the body as well. So the sickness that comes from the germ is actually secondary to the tissue in which they grow.
Yeah, I was already sick. So what we're trying to say is that we have to, at last, come to realize that our health greatly depends upon the reactive ability of our immune system.
Yeah.
We breathe in and swallow many thousands of microbes every hour without any ill effects.
Remember that movie, They?
No.
had Roddy Piper in it, and it was about the glasses, about the aliens that had taken over the planet, and if they wore these special glasses, they could see the billboards and the signs, obey,
Was that what's
produce,
that one
reproduce, work hard,
take your antibiotics.
be
Doctors are
obedient,
smarter than
follow,
anybody.
all this kind of stuff. And if you took off the glasses, it would look just like downtown cities look right now. The Pepsi commercials and the IBM stuff and all these things. But if you put the glasses on, then suddenly you could see the subliminal stuff. If you had glasses that could see the microbial world that you just referred to, about thousands of microbes being swallowed or breathed in, did you know that there are 30,000 species of bacteria?
Now that's species. So
that's
can you
not a total number.
No. Can you imagine 30,000 species of dogs?
Holy smoke.
I mean, really, how many dogs would there be in this world? I mean, if there's just 30,000 species of bacteria.
Or 30,000 species of horses or something like that.
Now get this. There are 5 million species of fungi. Species, not 5 million.
That's right. 5. Who numbered them? I think they're still numbering
These
them.
poor microbiologists that sit in labs all day long.
300,000 species of parasites. I mean, and these coronaviruses right now that's in the news, and COVID's just another coronavirus.
Can I just say that most parasites are wonderful for your body? Can I just say that? Okay, now you can go on.
Well, there are certain processes in your body that are dependent upon the presence of a virus.
Completely.
Of a parasite, I mean. So here's the thing. These coronaviruses, and
Don't apologize for it. Just jump into it.
These coronaviruses are simply genetic updates for the species of mankind and other animals which are afflicted by them. They all are. All the reptiles, all of the birds, all of the mammals, all of the things that creep and crawl on this planet that you can see with your naked eye are filled with these coronaviruses.
And because most animals are not sick. I mean, think about it. How many animals are really sick?
Well, how many
Chronically
animals
sick.
are eating potato chips, French fries fried in canola oil?
So they get this same virus, this genetic update, but the vast majority of people and almost all animals are taking in this genetic update. They have no symptoms to it.
Yes, that's one of the conundrums out there running around on the planet right now.
Yeah. So it's just expressing an adaptation to the stress that we've induced into the planet and our bodies of glyphosate, the drugs we're using, vaccinations, high fructose corn syrup, 5G. We did a whole podcast on that. All kinds of different poisonings going on. In fact, human beings in good health harbor many, many particularly pathogenic microbes. They did this study where they got these I think it was 7,000 people, where apparently healthy people, and they found diphtheria, meningitis, staphylococcal bacilli. How do you say that, babe?
Bacilli.
Of course, bacilli. That's staph. And the poliovirus. They found HIV and sometimes diseases that are present without any specific causative germs.
So even though they found people with all of these germs, they had no symptoms. And they would find people with disease symptoms that did not have any of these causative germs.
Yeah.
So Lewis Thomas, kind of an anthologist writing about this in a book called The Lives of a Cell, said this, and I quote, "Most bacteria are totally preoccupied with browsing, altering the configurations of organic molecules so they become more usable for the energy needs of other forms of life. In real life, even in our worst circumstances, we have always been a relatively, I hate to tell you this, a minor interest of the vast microbial world."
But not females.
No.
Not females.
So pathogenicity, in other words,
He's still
these
quoting
things
here.
causing diseases is not the rule. The quote continues, "Indeed, it occurs so infrequently and involves such a relatively small number of species, considering the huge population of bacteria on this earth, that it has a freakish aspect." In other words, we are so insignificant on this planet compared to the vast microbial world that, to blame.
And to think we can get away from that.
Oh, yeah. Or until we can
hilarious.
somehow escape it.
Yeah, so if your body's underlying health has been so significantly lowered,
Yeah.
and the bodily tissues have been adversely affected by microorganisms, then the body will usually require assistance in order to decrease the number of bacteria through the activation of a healing crisis.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So to help you through that, we would recommend podcast number 3, the healing triad.
yeah, because during a healing crisis, nutritional whole food supplements activate, vitalize, and support the body's own natural healing capabilities.
Yeah, and then after the healing crisis is over, you're going to have to change your nutritional habits and lifestyle in order to rebuild and strengthen the body's terrain, as well as to enhance its immune system so that the flies and the rats in the alley go away.
Yeah, because the amount of genetic material in our soil, our oceans, and our air is beyond any supercomputer's ability to even analyze.
Yeah, so when someone comes along and says, hey, there's a new virus, how the hell do they know that?
Yeah.
How the hell do they know it's even new?
Yeah.
I mean, what is the data that you're basing that on? Have you screened all the viruses that have ever come before us now? So you have a pretty cautious...
You have to be pretty cautious.
well, is there anything new under the sun?
Yeah, to say that there's a new virus out there. There's something new under the sun. You better be careful because
you're awfully presumptuous, because there's 10 to the 31 power, the 31st power viruses in the air.
and there's 10 to the 31 power viruses in the ocean.
And there's 10 to the 31 power viruses in the soil. Do you know how big a number 10 to the 31st power is?
No, tell us, Jack.
There's not even 10 to the 31st power of stars in the known universe. This micro world that I was talking about earlier, if you had these special glasses from the movie if you could see the microbes, well, we call it a microscope. And you can see them under a microscope because they're not visible to the naked eye. But if you had these glasses where somehow it magnified the whole picture in front of you, so you could see the parasites, you could see the bacteria, the viruses that are all over you, that you're breathing in, you're breathing out, you're eating them. They're underneath your eyelids, they're in your ears, they're under your nails, they're in your crotch. They're between your toes. They are everywhere.
We're literally absorbative machines.
Yes.
And we absorb everything through our eyes, through our skin, our mouth. All these viruses, since our origin.
Yeah, and how important is this microbiome inside of us to repel disease when we're nurturing the terrain? We have talked about the microbiome in so many podcasts,
But
Mary.
until this podcast, until we did this study, I had no idea there was 10 to the 31 power viruses in our soil, in our ocean, in our air. How in the world do we think we can get away from this?
Yes.
So, well, the microbiome is in your gut, but it isn't only the microbiome.
It's not the only microbiome.
Yeah. There's an even larger microbiome made of the same bacteria, parasites, fungi, and viruses. And all of this microscopic life is in you and is everywhere. And even, in the larger sense, it surrounds us
Yeah, I
all
think
the time.
it's important to understand how vast this ecosystem of the microbiome is around us. If you're not familiar with the term microbiome, micro meaning small, bio meaning life, and it's the world of all this unseen stuff, how vast this is, because it's tempting to think that we're the majority, that we're the top of the food chain.
We can't see
and that
these
these
guys.
little invisible guys are the minority, but in fact, we are almost non-existent compared to the volume of life on this planet in the microbiome from just a sheer gene point of view, a genomic standpoint. To give you an idea how vast this is, look at the numbers of the organisms that are around us, as we were talking about there a second ago.
It's pretty phenomenal.
Well, it is, and maybe you didn't know, but you've got 70 trillion human cells in your body that are human cells. That sounds like a large number.
Yeah, well, it's just slightly more than our national debt,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. But 70 trillion cells make up a human body. With now outnumbering that 70 trillion, more than tenfold, pushing 15, maybe 20-fold, is 1 to 1.5 to 2 trillion
Quadrillion.
quadrillion
I
bacteria
did the math. Yeah.
And those quadrillions of bacteria are diverse. There are about 30,000 to 40,000 species, as we talked about. Right now, we're walking around with a fraction of that because of what we have done to the environment through the use of glyphosate, one of the most powerful and deadly antibiotics ever invented.
Yeah, we don't think of a plant spray as an antibiotic. We think of it as a pesticide. Well, that's what a pesticide is. It kills everything. And, we're supposed to have 30 to 40,000 species of bacteria around us. But guess what? We don't.
No, and then you go from the bacteria to the parasites.
They protect us.
Now you're not at 30,000 species, you're at 300,000 species of parasites.
Yeah, we've got to kill those
and
too.
Most of these parasites are actually not very damaging. In fact, they're life-giving to the human body.
Yeah, we have little parasites that live under our eyelids. They're living in our sweat pores. And these parasites help regulate normal, healthy cellular function.
Yeah, these parasites live all over us, and we probably depend on them for our very existence, for our health. 300,000 of these little guys.
Yeah.
And they have been vilified just as we vilify the germs.
And then you move to the fungi, 5 million species of fungi.
Yeah,
And then you move to the viruses. And like we said, we haven't even begun to categorize the species of viruses.
No, we've got a rough idea that we have basically 10 to the 31st power of viruses on this planet.
Yeah.
That's 30. That's one with 31 zeros after it. We don't even have a name for that number. It's roughly 10 million times more than the stars in the entire universe. There's 10 million times more viruses on planet Earth right now than our stars in the entire universe. Not the galaxy, the universe.
Yeah, good luck trying to get away from them.
Yeah, so we're talking about billions, times billions, times billions, times billions of viruses around us. Now, what's the chances, Mary, that those billions upon billions upon billions of viruses are out there to kill us?
Well, the answer is 0.
Yeah, if they didn't want us here, we would have never appeared. If they wanted to kill us, they would have killed us a long time ago. So the fact is, this microbiome outside of us is an ecosystem in which we play a very tiny little role. And from a genetic standpoint, it's a very tiny little niche. We only have 20,000 genes in the human genome, and they've counted it, is only 20,000 genes. Did you know that's only 2/3 as many as a flea? A flea that you can barely see, that I just saw Lucy a little while ago scratching her coat. A flea has 30,000 genes. We have 20,000 genes. A flea has 30,000 genes. And so we are bizarrely engineered as a tiny little genetic envelope passing itself off as human life.
Yeah.
Most of our DNA, 99% of our DNA, doesn't even code for a gene. It seems to be inserts from other forms of life, viruses, other species that have inserted their data into our genome.
So the
we
virus.
know that the I forget the name of it. The energy producing thing in our cells.
ATP?
Well, the thing that produces the
Micro-
ATP, for Pete's sake, I can't think of it. I'll think of it here before it's over with. They don't think it's human. They think that somehow in our development, because it resembles a plant more than it resembles a human. And it's the mitochondria. I knew how to think of it.
I was getting ready to say that.
Well, of course you were. I saw your lips forming
I did
it.
say I went mitochondria. Then I went, geez.
Well, anyway.
I didn't take the biology
And
classes
so,
you took.
the brilliant capacity of we as human beings for creativity, for adaptation. We're the only species, in fact, and I don't want to belittle the human species, but we're the only species that's adapted to every single environment on this planet.
No, it's not. That's not an insult. That's incredible.
Well,
cats don't adapt. I mean, you could take our cat Lucy anywhere, and she's going to act the exact same, no matter if she's being frightened or scared or jumped upon or whatever. If she goes to another home, she's going to act exactly the same.
Take her to the Antarctic. Will she survive there? Nothing will survive there except human beings, because we can adapt to it.
Because we can think and go,
Yes.
let's put a coat on.
Well, that adaptation and the plasticity of our own genome, and thanks to the plasticity to our DNA, to be able to absorb all this data that's coming into us, the parasites, the germs, the virus, the fungi, all these DNA-based things, not the virus, they're RNA, but all these things come in, they get taken into our bodies, and the terrain adapts to the presence of these things in our bodies through a genetic chain change as long as the terrain is healthy. Like if you have a chronic ailment,
spits it out.
yeah, whether it's something as a postnasal drip or a chronic congestion, diarrhea, constipation, chronic bloating, obesity, it doesn't matter what the ailment is. If that continues to manifest every day of your life, it's because your environment continues to allow that to be the body that you built.
Today.
So many patients I talk to, how long have you had this condition? Oh, my life.
Yeah, but you can change it today. See, that's the thing.
That's the good news.
That's incredible. It means that we have an almost incalculable capacity to change who and how we feel today by changing the environment around us today.
And that's the whole purpose of this podcast, because a lot of us, we don't realize we are less than 1/1,000,000th of a percent of life on this planet. So right now, Mary, if I would swab your mouth, we could extract these little envelopes that are floating around in your saliva, these little exosomes, these little packets of what are known as microRNA. People want to call them viruses. We kind of call them exosomes. They're in your saliva right now. And if we go and analyze that, they can tell exactly what genes you're starting to turn on and exactly which microRNA are being activated to modify these genes. So when they do the swabs in the nose and the throat for COVID-19, they're looking at the presence of a tiny little strand of RNA to say, oh my gosh, you've got COVID, rather than going deeper and looking at the terrain and look at where did this stuff come from? What is the earth trying to tell us with the presence of COVID-19? Oh, well, no, it was created in a biolab and it's a weapon and no.
These microRNA are signaling. They're warning us to marshal your white blood cells into action. They may even be causing like a craving for a certain food, as parasites do, or emotional calmness. But in other words, change your terrain so you can better withstand the messenger. And so when the messenger messages, don't kill the messenger. Like we're trying to kill the virus.
Yes, we're trying to kill it.
Don't kill the messenger. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to kill the messenger. We're trying to kill the virus. You cannot kill something that's not alive.
The virus is not alive.
No, it
doesn't breathe. It doesn't eat. It doesn't excrete. It has no nervous system. It has no digestive system. It doesn't move.
Doesn't have any personality.
It has to be moved. It doesn't tell funny jokes.
It's a message to evolve or devolve. There's not enough RNA in these little viral elements to possibly do us any harm to any human being.
Now, wait a minute, Mary. Wait a minute. Aren't all these people getting sick all over the world? I mean, the rate of the infected has already broken records in this country alone. Obviously, this COVID germ is killing people.
Is it? Because you only believe that because you've been told that by your healthcare leaders, Jack.
What?
There are too many very wise and well-established medical scientists who are blogging and podcasting and YouTubing and saying, hold on, wait a minute. This so-called virus has yet to be proven to have caused anything. Now, along with comorbidity and problems you have, you can, follow the line down, the linear line down and say, oh, it started with this tiny virus that can't cause anything, because we're only going on assumptions.
The politics behind this is blinding many in the healthcare world to the truth. You've got these exosomes. You've got these little packets of data that are coming out of the cell that are being interpreted as a virus that goes out into the environment around you. Let me give you an example. Say you're sitting in church. And over the course of an hour, that pastor, the priest, the bishop, whatever, who is speaking up there for an hour is actually going to change everybody's genome in that room by exhaling, getting these exosomes, these viruses, of which there are literally trillions of them in our lungs that we're breathing out, these microRNA samples. There's a tiny little bit of information that he's going to exchange, or that she is, with the entire congregation. And you, in turn, are exchanging with them and with everyone else in that room. So when the lecture's over, everyone's just a tiny bit different in their genetic makeup.
Yeah, and they're not sick. They're being upgraded.
That is the coolest thing in the world.
And it's leading to herd immunity. And if their terrain is healthy, they won't even notice that it's happening.
They're talking about all these people who are testing positive for COVID who have no symptoms. Why? Because the terrain is healthy. Well, so what, you ask? Well, your immune system follows your genetic design, as does everything else in you that's dependent on your DNA blueprint. You can come out of that chapel, that cathedral, whatever else, and be a little stronger or a little weaker, depending on the overall health of everyone who is present in that room, as well as your own underlying condition. Because you guys, you and all the people present have been sharing
it's beautiful.
RNA signals with each other. With what you breathe out, what you breathe in, touching, kissing, hugging, laughing, sneezing, whatever. You're going to be different, just as a weekend in the mountains, or even a 2-hour drive through the mountains with the windows of the car open, blowing that beautiful mountain air is going to change you for the better. I mean, anyone who's done this knows how time in nature makes them feel so much better.
Yeah, and it's just not just the fresh air. It's what's coming to you.
Absolutely.
In the fresh air.
Yes, absolutely.
So every time you pluck a weed, there's a little plume of microbiome that'll come up and out of the soil. And if you lean down and you're engaged with that weed, you've just introduced, at the very least, bacteria, fungi, and some other helpful stuff to your skin or to your lungs, which can then slowly repopulate your body.
Yeah.
You'll receive right into your nose, into your nasal sinuses, and in the upper respiratory tract of your lungs, some of these critical bacteria from your environment.
Yeah, you can't get away from it. And let me tell you, as crazy as it might sound, Mary and I were out in the backyard this morning pulling some small weeds from the grass. And we would hold them up to our nose. We would smell them. We would
They actually smelled good.
breathe in their aroma before we threw them away, because the microbes covering those weeds are a part of our life's community with our environment.
Beautiful.
And our body. And it's now what we breathed in this morning is a part of our microbiome.
Yeah, because so as they entered our lungs, they'll get a train ride through our lymph and even in our blood to every little hiding place in our body.
Yeah, have you ever smelled a rose and came away sick? I mean, you didn't just smell the flower. Look at that beautiful rose blossom. You inhaled millions of microbes that you can't see that's covering that blossom.
Yeah, and maybe that's why we're instinctually driven to smell a rose.
Mary, that's profound.
Yeah.
That's a very good
Yeah.
idea, because the bacteria in your
Because we
gut,
should not be smelling poop. See?
what's in poop?
Ooh, exosomes.
The stuff your body wanted to get rid of.
That's right.
So the bacteria in your gut, the fungi, the parasites, the viruses are making at least, and this blew my mind, at least 35% of the microRNA floating through your bloodstream isn't even human, and you don't even know that. I think that you know just by the sheer numbers that we were talking about here for a few minutes ago. We are so overwhelmingly outnumbered by the bacteria and the fungi and the parasites.
And the viruses.
You're going to find that 99% of the microRNA in your bloodstream is not from a human source.
So that is what bacteria does. They're making microRNA that they're secreting into your environment, which is your gut, your sinuses, or your breath.
Yeah, and so if you walk outside without a mask, heaven help us. Let's say in the fall, in the mountain, here in the mountains of Utah, where the colors are just indescribable and the trees are beautiful, and if you get into the foresty areas that are still kind of damp,
The decomposing.
where
you
the
know.
decomposing, the loamy kind of smell that's in the woods or
Oh,
the
I love
soils,
that
and all the
smell.
leaves following, all that microbiome is exuding these exosomes of microRNA that we call a virus. And every time you go out and breathe the fall air, nature is telling your body, this is the time for you to reconsolidate and build strength for the winter to come.
Yeah, because you build better bone in the winter than in the summer.
Yeah,
And you're
that's
sending
true.
less energy out to your peripherals, your arms and your legs and parts of your body. And the energy is starting to go into your core.
Yeah, just like a tree, where they put, when a tree will put its energy, when it gets cold, the tree starts putting its energy into the roots and their core to get through the fall and winter. So what happens to the branches and the leaves when all the energy is redirected to the core?
Yeah.
The tree didn't die. It's not going into hibernation, though we think it is. No, the energy just went into the roots. The energy isn't
core.
there to keep the leaves alive anymore. So the leaves fall from the tree. So everything changes. Everything's dynamic. Nothing's stagnant. And your body knows to change which organ system gets the benefit of the fuel that you're eating, and depending on which microenvironment you're living in and how you're absorbing it.
Germs are companion species to all living beings on this planet.
Yes.
And they're an essential and normal part of our internal and external environment. And they do this by assisting us in maintaining a balanced and efficient biological economy inside of us.
Yeah, because conversely, when we allow our bodies to become saturated with the accumulations of morbid, metabolic waste material, these germs then can proliferate around that matter and create these dynamic processes in our body, often referred to by non-medical practitioners as a cleansing, a healing crisis.
Yeah, these, we're calling them exosomes, which are a cellular cleansing of the cell to keep that cell alive and healthy and save your life. That's what the exosomes are. They decide, we got to clean out this cell or it's going to die, which in turn, eventually, if all your cells die, you die. So if your terrain is healthy and nothing needs to be cleaned out, these viruses are not the enemy, and they are not going to be the enemy to be feared.
But in this politically controlled world that we're in right now, politically controlled health world, all viruses are bad.
Well, it's so much easier. It's
the
like
viruses
the germ
will
theory.
kill you.
Yeah, germs are the enemy.
And again, you look at the people who are dying from COVID-19. They're already sick. They're already at the end of their life.
Not that that's not sad.
And then all they talk about is the explosive cases in Arizona and California and Texas and now Florida. Florida is just the whipping boy of the press anymore. But they don't talk about the death rate. And here in Utah, they announced again this morning, Utah has the lowest death rate of any state in the union from COVID-19, yet we're having these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new cases every day, because we're doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of testing every day.
Well, let's get back to this.
Okay,
These
all right.
exosomes, okay, they're like the end result of every system working in concert inside of your body, working together to eliminate, cleanse or purify, and regenerate. This is what regenerates old, worn out, or diseased tissues in the body, where the stem cells will come in and say, I'm taking over. Bye-bye, you apoptosis cell. You need to do the natural death of a cell, which is called apoptosis, and you need to die and go away, and I need this new stem cell to come in and take your place.
Yeah, so when you get overwhelmed by these exosomes that you picked up from somebody else, or in the food or in the air or whatever else, and you start feeling worse, this feeling worse before feeling better syndrome is quite similar to that if you went through a cleansing fast. Mm-hmm. And you get these reactions that include skin eruptions or rashes or nausea, dizziness, pain, cramps, the flu, headaches, stuffiness, sleepiness, some unusual fatigue, diarrhea, boils, ear infections, head or chest. I mean, it just goes on and on. Or any other form of really therapeutic symptoms that the body can employ just to loosen and eliminate these toxins.
Get them out of the cell.
Yeah. So it's like a garbage strike in your neighborhood. And this stuff starts building up on the streets and building up on the curb. And all of a sudden, where did all these rats come from? Where do flies? We never had flies like this. You get rid of the garbage. You get rid of the junk. These things go away.
Well, and then the micro RNA and these exosomes or these viruses come in and clean everything up.
And we see a prevalence of the virus, and we say, "Oh my gosh, it's the virus that's causing the sickness."
We found the rats.
We found the rats. The rats cause the garbage.
Yeah, no, rats don't cause
before
garbage.
When the rats weren't here, there was no garbage. Now there's garbage and there's rats everywhere. The rats must have brought the garbage.
Yes, that's how simplistic our medicine is right now.
So we say, well, the viruses are there. This must be why they're dying. No.
It's completely wrong.
You've got to look deeper. You've got to go deeper and look at the terrain of these sick people who are dying from it. I mean, and it's back to this healing crisis idea that we were talking about here a minute ago. It's only temporary. It may last 3 to 7 days during the initial cleanse when these things are going
like
on.
A cold.
But you have a fever, and you're sick, and you ache, and you got a sore throat, and you may have muscle stiffness. So we say, Well, let's take a look at, oh, we did a throat swab. We did a nasal swab. You have COVID-19. When in fact, it may be nothing more than just the body's requirement for cleansing that's taking place. And
yeah, and make sure you drink a lot of water.
oh, yeah.
Teas.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is when we require therapeutic levels of supplemental whole food support to enable the body to right itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not die.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually.
Which usually is the result of interfering with this process when they're given toxic drugs
Yeah,
or
that's
procedures
usual.
that interfere with nature, like ventilators.
Yeah, wow. We won't even get into that. We've done that on many podcasts. So
Yeah.
let's recap here.
Okay.
Healthy cells
wrap it up.
are extremely resistant to any microbial overgrowth or proliferation until the body's tissues get sick enough to develop a disease condition. That's where it can no longer detox on a cellular level, and it allows the infection to spread.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we've come to associate microbes or germs with these unhealthy terrain disorders, and we subsequently regard them as the cause of the problem rather than the symptom, just as the rat and the fly was the cause of the garbage rather than they were the symptom of a buildup of garbage.
Garbage. Yeah, I love that. Unhealthy terrain disorders. Man, do you think we could patent that? Do you think we could like spread that everywhere? This is a disease of unhealthy terrain disorders. Wow. Wouldn't that be cool?
Gee, Doc, well, what do I do? Well, you're going to change your diet.
Yeah, you got to change the terrain
Yes.
and fast, and you got to do it. And luckily, your body's set to repair and restore.
It'll take about a week to 2 weeks. We're going to start off with broth.
Get rid of all the unorganic food in your diet.
Yes. We're going to get rid of the glyphosate poisoning that's going on. We're going to get you clean water, clean air, clean sunshine,
And-
rest,
And hey,
and
let's,
watch what happens in 2 weeks.
let's help you out with just a little calcium.
And as the terrain restores itself, where are these toxic germs and viruses going to go? They're going to go to your neighbor who didn't clean their bodies up.
Yeah, well, that's not funny. That's kind of sad, but that's true. That's what Mother Nature happens, because if the germ theory were true, that germs kill you, there would be nobody left alive to believe the germ theory.
I love that
It's
saying.
not germs that kill you, it's the terrain. Not being able to handle the exosomic detox of your cells. A simpler way to say it is a weakened, sick, and exhausted immune system is what kills you.
That's why comorbidity is almost always present in the vast majority of cases of people who die from COVID.
Yeah.
They're already suffering from cardiovascular problems, kidney problems, liver problems.
And sadly, so many little kids, young people, are dying from COVID.
Because as we started off with,
there's so many sick kids now.
54% of the children in America have a chronic condition according to the CDC.
Chronic.
And it's not the germs that's giving them the chronic condition. It's all the environmental toxins and poisons they're swimming around in every day that has led to the sickened tissue that brings the chronic condition. So they do a blood test or they do a tissue sample. Oh, look at these terrible staphylococci that are in your throat. That's the problem. No. The staphylococci is a warning from nature. That the terrain
Danger, Will Robinson.
Yes. And if we don't clean up the terrain, if we don't get those Twinkies and those Ho-Hos and that chocolate milk and all the candies and cakes and pastries and everything else out of that child's diet, it's going to get worse.
Not one person on that podium said, stay away from sugar. They said, wear a mask and run from these viruses that
Masks
you can't
that
run
won't
from.
even stop dust and dirt somehow was going to stop a virus.
And all they had to say was, I mean, we have to switch the entire thinking of our society to where we take responsibility for our health, and it's not the germ's fault. Now, are we going to do that? Probably not. Because you don't get elected to office when you tell people that it's their fault that they're the way they are.
Yes. Yeah, people don't want to hear that. People want to be able to not surrender. They want to pass on
Blame.
the responsibility. They want to blame their own the results of where they are physically, bodily, spiritually, mentally, emotionally on some causative factor outside of the neglect of their own own bodies.
So, this is actually really simple. So, for those of you that are doing well and are free of conditions and concerns, We want you to stay that way. Or for those of you that do have conditions
Yes.
and concerns, we want to help you. And the way to do that, it's not a huge thing. It's not gigantic. And you heal so quickly, much faster than it took you to get sick. Add a little bit of help to your body. A small change in your daily regimen
would go a long way.
Yeah, it'll go a long way. And so we invite you to listen to another Forbidden podcast, number 136, What to Do Before, During, and After the Flu.
I don't know how we could say it simpler than that.
Simple things.
This is number 200 in our podcast. We've covered about everything. There's a couple of little things here and there that we didn't. What to do when your little finger on the left hand hurts. But we'll get to it. And if you want some more information about yourself or where you are, some kind of a profile, some kind of an assessment, you can take the free symptom survey. You can don't forget to tell your family and friends. It's free at forbiddendoctor.com, and it can help them start to address their comorbidity issues that precede sicknesses such as COVID-19. They need to fix the terrain of their body so that disaster doesn't hit.
Yeah, I mean, this symptom survey is free. So just tell them or tell yourself this survey saves them money in the long run because you're not taking supplements you don't need or they don't need. And if you decide to purchase the recommended supplements, sign up for our VIP membership that we talked about at the beginning of this podcast and get 20% off. It's the only place you can do this. Go to forbiddendoctor.com and let's start your road to better health today.
Yeah.
Or you can always call our office at 801-523-1890, and our incredible staff can get you the answers about your supplementation or talk to you about the supplementation recommended by our nutritionists from the symptom survey, because the Forbidden Doctor's mission is to reveal health secrets they don't want you to know.
And remember, everybody, it's your patronage of our offers that keeps this podcast on the air.
The statements made in this podcast about specific products have not been evaluated by the United States Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. All information provided or any information contained on or in any product label or packaging or this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for your advice from your physician or other healthcare professional.
So thank you all for listening to this Forbidden Information and our Forbidden podcast, number 200.
Our 200th Forbidden podcast.
Now on to 300.
Can't believe this. So join us next time for another in-depth discussion of forbidden knowledge.
We'll see you then.
Yeah, we'll see you then.